Hi, my name is Kaylin Malcolm, and this is my midterm for ethnic studies. I wanted to start off with Yankee imperialism from 1901 to 1934. And at the time, even though slavery was not around during this time, it was the fact that racism was still so prominent during this period of time during the 20th century, and US leaders allowed it to happen. Now, there is a quote that stuck out to me the most, and it says, US leaders also rationalized their budding empire on the basis of race. I think that this is because these leaders that were running the country at this time, between the time of 1901 to 1934, they grew up in the time where slavery was acceptable. And I think then when they became leaders of America, they still thought that the idea of racism was okay. Now, do I think it's okay? Absolutely not. But it's crazy to me that in the 20th century that this was still allowed. So basically 2 decades worth of racism and slavery going on consistently. And it's all because these leaders were greedy. Then I had to rewatch the video that was in one of our modules, and it was called The Indian Problem. After watching that video, what I got out of it the most was that these French and European men, these white men, wanted greed. They wanted to be able to take over the lands and they wanted to own the area. Eventually, it got to the point where this land that they were taking over was no longer sentimental to these Native American people, and that was because these white men had taken over and it didn't mean anything to anybody anymore. To these white men, it was just an area of land that they were going to build on, and they were going to build this amazing community, and they were going to build this lifestyle for these, what were about to be Americans. Now, the evidence in this video is that people saw this happen. They saw the proof of it. There was one lady in the video explaining, she was like, I remember these people in wagons pulling up and taking everything and just taking over the land that was ours, essentially. Um, and there was proof that these leaders coming were breaking all of the US treaties that they had. Now, they had these treaties in place so that the Native Americans could still own their land, and this would be a deal that they would make with them. Well, eventually, these leaders just wanted to take over everything. They didn't care about the treaties anymore, whether there was a signature or not. They were going to do what they had to do in order to take over the land. For example, there was alcohol involved, so they would make people drink and make sure they were signing contracts that needed to be signed. They had false leaders, so they would tell some random citizen, hey, you need to go tell so-and-so that they need to sign this paper, and basically agree to something that they don't even know what they're agreeing to. And there was lots and lots of bribery saying like, oh, we'll give you this if you sign this. But at the end of the day, whoever was signing the contract never got what they had agreed upon. But the main point over through this entire video that I was watching was that the US stayed greedy and aggressive. They did not back down until they got what they wanted, which is really sad, that that's how we got here today. But I had the idea of going to look up, like, when did racial discrimination when did it kind of change for everything? And I looked it up and it said that there was a legal highlight, and it said the Civil Rights Act, obviously in 1964. In 1964, the Congress passed Public Law 88, 352. And the Civil Rights Act in 1964 prohibits discrimination against basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Provisions of the Civil Rights Act forbade the discrimination on the basis of sex as well as race in hiring, promoting, or firing. So this basically means that you cannot hire, fire, or promote anybody based on their their race, their color, religion, sex, or national origin, which obviously this was a great thing for the US to be able to pass. And now we have African Americans that can work where they want. But then Also, looking into current day time slash 2019 era, it's the fact that this still goes on. Now, even though that was a legal law passed in the civil rights and it was no longer allowed, we still see some things today. And I looked up a article written by the White House, and it's titled Racial Discrimination in Contemporary America. And in the executive summary, it says, while there are many gaps have improved over time, obviously, like, we don't have slavery anymore, and African Americans are allowed to go to school, or people of any color are allowed to go to school with white people. They're allowed to go to the same bathrooms. They're allowed to shop at the same places, things like that. That no longer exists. But anyways, while many gaps have improved over time, significant racial disparities still exist in various aspects of American life, such as neighborhood quality, which affect the children's environment, employment in adulthood, and wealth accumulation. Sadly, this is still true, and living in a predominantly white county, I looked up the stats in Sonoma County, and as of 2022, it was 64.3% Sonoma County population was white or non-Hispanic, and then it says Hispanic people 6.43%, and then African Americans are 1.7%, and then there were some other stats in there. But I just wanted to highlight this statistic because it does show that a lot of our neighborhoods in Sonoma County or in our area are predominantly white neighborhoods, and there might be some older folks that don't agree that their neighborhood should be taken over by low income houses. And typically the people that live in low income housing are not of the white race. And I think that this is just a perspective that some people have. And at the end of the day, what I really want to highlight is that there are still, sadly, some people in America and in our area that have this idea that white people rule the world and they rule America and everything revolves around them, which is not true. We still need to be accepting of other people, especially considering if they are also equally a citizen of America. I am definitely a strong believer on that. If you are a citizen of America, you have the same right as I do, whether it is your race, sex, or original nationality. But that's besides the point. It's the fact that it's all about a mindset that people have, and if people have a closed mindset of not being able to accept somebody because of their race, sex, religion, or any of those things listed in the civil rights from 1964, I think that's all about a perspective that they had. And as young people in America and in Sonoma County, all we can do is help inform them and help maybe not change their views, but help maybe expand their views, because sometimes it's really hard for some older people to change their minds, but it's important for us to educate them on updated events and things like that, because some of them have grown up in a time where it was okay to be discriminative towards other races, whether they grew up in the 20th century or not. It still was somewhat acceptable. So overall, what I got out of doing some more research was that the Americans were overall very greedy when they came over to when they started up America and they were taking over land from the Native Americans. But at the end of the day, we have improved so much, but there are still some people that view the way that the French and Europeans did back in the 1600s. And obviously we have changed, but there is still some changing to do, but we have made such a huge improvement.